Well, hello everyone, and I'm going to give you another video today, and this time it's going to be about mixing, which is a kind of area I haven't touched on before. And for the purpose of this video, I've made a track from scratch. It's not really that long, and it's probably not even that good, but it was just due to purpose, and I've put into it some deliberate errors, which should be educational to fix. And actually, I'll just play it all the way through, just so you can hear what we're going to be working with. So yeah. Yeah, so it's not really that good. I'll have a bit louder so I can hear. Wait. Yeah, good. So that's what we're going to be working with, and yeah. So firstly, what is mixing exactly? Mixing is the purpose of getting these to 9 tracks here and getting down into one, which I'm going to either release or send for mastering or master myself or whatever. And so it's understandably quite an important bit of the thing you're working on. But before we start, there's 2 things I really need to clarify. Firstly, a bad mix won't be fixed by mastering. So get it right when you're mixing, and don't just leave it later and say, "Oh, I'll be fine," because it won't. And I've experienced having to try and fix something in a mix, which was in the master because the project broke. I mean, that wasn't my choice, but that's the way it was. And it's really quite difficult and not worth putting yourself through. So just make sure everything in your mix is good to start with. And the second thing is mix at low volumes. This can be taken 2 ways. Firstly, listen at a low volume. So don't blast it out through your speakers and rave to it in your bedroom, because when you listen to stuff loud, you get more bass and you get more treble and it sounds better to you. If you want to know why, it's called the equal loudness contour. Google it; it's really interesting. And the other way you can take the mix at low volumes thing is don't push your levels on the mix at part 0 dB full scale. So it basically means none of the different tracks are clipping. You see when I play, they're all like, well, the highest is the kick drum, that's 4.9, mine's 4.9 obviously. So we're all quite safe territory, and even the master I've taken down a bit. But yeah, so just careful you're not clipping, because that does change the sound and it's not very helpful. Third thing I need to say is there's some plugins you're going to need for this, most of which you'll probably have already, but there's a couple you might want to get. So one thing you're going to need is an EQ. Usually the one in your DAW will do. This is Logic, as you may have noticed. But you don't need to use any of the inbuilt plugins. You can bring your professional one along. You're going to need some kind of compressor which does sidechaining. So I'm going to be using another inbuilt plugin, and you'll see it's got a sidechain option, which is cool. Next thing you might need is, well, I'm going to be using a dynamic EQ. Where is it? It's something I got recently. Where is it? Oh, that one. Yeah, that one. I'll put all the links to these in the description, but this is a dynamic equalizer, and this is free, so get it. So, and I'll get on to how this works later, but an alternative, it could be multiband sidechaining. So you can do that too. And then I'm also going to be using some sort of stereo widener. For me, it's going to be this one. And something that can both widen and make more narrow will be good too. Next thing, I'm going to use a bit of reverb. There is inbuilt reverb, which I use as a creative thing, but reverb can be used nicely in mixing too, and I'm probably going to be using this one because it's got this bit's important. And lastly, some sort of transient shaper, because kick drums and snares and maybe the clap, I don't know, you can do a lot with those. And I might accidentally use another plugin which I haven't thought of beforehand and written down on my piece of notepaper because it's a long video. But I'll put all links to stuff you might want in the description, and hopefully that will all be good. finally, and this is finally, before I start mixing, there's obviously you can mix as you go when you're making a track, or you can do all the heavyweight mixing at the end. If I was going to, I usually mix as I go firstly, but if I was going to do that in this video, you'd have to be watching 20 hours of video as I made a track from scratch, and that probably wouldn't be very concise, neither would it be very interesting, and it'd be a pain to film it, so we're not going to do that, and I'm just going to mix it all as if it's the end of the track, which is going to be considerably shorter and hopefully a bit more interesting. But just everything I do in this video isn't exclusive to doing at the end. You can do it as you go. Just keep that in mind. So I think with all that over, we can now start. So I'm going to bring up the mixer here, and as we play, you can see everything's looking cool. Step one of mixing is to level match things. So you see we've got all the sliders, and they're all at 0 currently. Now, you might find when you play your sub bass might be too loud, or the lead might be too quiet, or anything. So your task, first of all, is to make sure everything is sitting at the right level. So I think he's about right because I made this track earlier, but I'll just see. Yeah, and as you can see, they're all pretty much in the right place for me, and that's because I didn't normalise them when I exported them from the other project I was doing this in, this one. So they're about right for me, but you might find they're completely off for you and you need to do a lot of fixing. Step 2 is enhancing individual instruments. So, I mean, this isn't one instrument. We've got sub, we've got the standard bass. Sub sounds like this. Pretty standard. We've got the bass, which is this thing. Some sort of pad, which is this, and then the static, which kind of goes with the pad, and then we've got the lead, obviously, some kind of drum sort of stuff, and then the kick drum, the snare, and the clap for the kind of electro bit. So we've got individual instruments, and each of them probably isn't perfect. So there's the stuff we can do. Sub bass, for instance, I think I'm going to add on this thing, which is the Waves RBass. It was free on the Black Friday sales, you know, that thing where everyone gives stuff away really cheaply, and it's really quite useful. If you don't have this, you'll have to buy it or wait another year or something. But what it does is it adds in extra harmonics further up the frequency spectrum, so if you're listening on a tiny pair of speakers, you might still get some kind of hint that there is a bit of a sub down there. So I'm just going to sort this out. And yeah, I mean, I'm not listening through great headphones right now, but that's the sort of thing you need to do, and might come back and tweak that later. The bass, I'm going to say I'm happy with, just saving up some time. Pad, let's listen. I think what I can do with the pad is a bit of stereo widening. That's so that's actually just like 1.22 dB of stereo widening. It's not much, but I think pads deserve to be nice and wide. Static, this probably is very much mono at the moment, I have a feeling. Yeah, so that sort of thing, this is a great example of enhancing an instrument. Best way to, in my opinion, the best way to do kind of high-end stuff is with one of these, Stereo Touch. And it just happens to be one of those plugins I failed to mention earlier on, so I've broken my promise already. But So yeah, there's a lot of stereo width coming through on that. So now if we look through our this thing again, yeah, we got a nice circle shape. That's what I aim for. So that's that lead. I think what I'm going to do is add a tiny bit of high end, just a bit of sparkle, and that's going to be all for me on that. I think I'm happy with them actually, because I did some stuff in the previous mix. Kick drum, what's this like? That could do with some, yeah, I think transient shaping. So there's the bittersweet, the one I mentioned. So that sounding cool like that. I think I'm pretty happy with that. Again, my headphones aren't great, the ones I'm wearing right now, so yeah. And then the snare, that's definitely missing some high end. And again, I think the transient shaper can probably take an outing on this one, so add that on. And then the clap, this might need a bit of, yeah, I think reverb, that's what I was thinking earlier. And I'm going to use some quite long reverb. This is a really simple plugin. It's like, cool, and that's probably going to be suffering from the I think I'm probably happy with that. I mean, this is probably not right at all. Yeah, we'll go with that. But you get the idea. What I'm trying to do here, I'm trying to enhance the individual instruments, but ultimately mixing is about the way they interact with each other. So don't feel that you're like making your kick sound like a whole song or something. Not that that's going to happen, but just subtle stuff will do fine at this stage. And before we start about kind of interactions between instruments, you're going to need to go through and adjust your levels again. Kind of, because when you EQ something and add high end like I have here on the snare, you'll find it will get louder, so you might need to take it down a bit when the snare comes in. And similarly with all the other stuff, I've added some volume with this, so you can either do it within there or just take it down on the master here, and you need to kind of make the alterations to keep it at the right level again, and you'll do that again at the end. When you listen to it for the last time, just check everything's at the right level. Cool, there was a bit of a click there, never mind. So I'm probably going to leave it at that. I can't really hear very well with these headphones. I'm going to stop moaning about that now. So now we're going to move on to probably one of the more important stage, and that's the way the instruments react with each other. And you've probably seen this sort of thing in endless mixing videos, but someone will be moaning about how the kick clashes with the sub, which clashes with some pad or something, and stuff's covering each other up. You've got fruits overlapping. And that's what we're going to sort now. And so let's start with the classic, the kick and the sub. And we're going to do a couple of things. So with both of these instruments, you'll see the kick drum has its frequency. Wait one sec. Yeah, the kick drum has its frequency at about 41 Hertz or something. So that frequency, if it appears in the bass, is going to be a bit of an issue because they're both fighting for space. And actually I think we're pretty much safe here, but you know, you can't take any chances. So we're going to put in our 41 Hertz cut, and we're going to bring that up a bit. Other thing to say, pretty much high pass everything, you know, at varying degrees. So this, for a sub bass, you want it really quite low, but hi-hat stuff you want to be high passing high. So that's one thing we do. We do subtractive EQing in the one we want to kind of set to the background. So kick drum we want to hear every time it hits. Sub bass is in the way, so we're going to take some out of the sub bass where that frequency hits. And there's not just on the fundamental frequency, you can do this with all this stuff, you just take out all the high end. There shouldn't be any in the sub bass anyway, so we're going to get rid of it. And the second thing that I like to do when we're mixing sub and kick is sidechaining. And we're going to use the basic sort of sidechaining because subs only have kind of one frequency in them, or near enough, so we don't need to be all delicate with which frequencies we're sidechaining. So we need to solo the two we're doing, these two, and I need to set the sidechain to the kick because that would help. So you can see how it's kind of swelling with the sound, and then we just need to kind of a quickish attack. I think that will do. As a side note, if you're doing kind of creative sidechaining, you might want to take the release up so it kind of swells with the sound and gets the kind of pumping and the crowds jumping. So, but if you're doing it purely for mixing purposes, keep it short to avoid taking out more of the sound when the kick's not playing than you need to. So that's all we're going to need for the kick and the sub. They're not going to be causing each other too much trouble. This bass, you know, I said I was happy with this in terms of sounding by itself, but I fear when we listen to it and with an analyzer, because you'll see, I mean, it's got this sub frequency in it, and we've already got that frequency playing in the sub bass, so I would question whether we really need it twice. In fact, I highly recommend you don't have frequencies overlapping, especially in the low end, because if you do, you get phase cancellation or stuff adding up. Adding up I tend to think is better, but just keep the stuff only happening in one instrument at a time in the low end. So we're taking out the sub frequency from this. So now when you play them together, we've got both frequencies in there we want. So that's one thing about the sub and the bass. Other thing is, of course, this kick and the bass. And this, I mean, we've taken out the bass, but I'm not sure I quite trust that yet. So we're going to use my the duck EQ. This is the dynamic equalizer, which is free, and I recommend. So I might have to do a bit of explaining about what this thing really does. It's kind of like a sidechainer, but you can do it in bands. So first thing we do is you do it on this instrument. Whoops. Yeah, you do it on the kick, the bass even, because that's the one you want to be doing the kind of the frequency ducking on. Then you set the sidechain to the other one, which you're trying to put in the foreground, the kick, it tends to be the kick we use. So that means this diagram will only follow the kick. Can you see that? So there we are again. So now what we need to do is just adjust our threshold with this thing. Wait. So yeah, I'm just fine-tuning the kind of attack and release settings and sort of stuff to get the threshold right. And then what we're going to do, which is the actual important bit of doing this, is take away some frequencies, and that's what this bit's about. So we said 41 Hertz was our Danish frequency, and we need a kind of a a kind of a high Q because we need a thin band. So 2 is I think QQ is calculated with frequency divided by the bandwidth in hertz, and that gets you this number, which until recently I thought was completely arbitrary, but no, it turns out there was a way of calculating it. And then we need to do an actual kind of value. So every time that kick drum hits, we want to take away 6 dB. Maybe that's too much. Maybe 4 dB from the bass. So, and you'll see kind of a little thing. You'll see that thing flashes up. I think if I take it out more. So you see it goes boom and down again. That just means every time your kick drum hits, it starts EQing it. So it means you're not EQing something when you don't need to, which is really useful. And you can do it for other frequencies in this. I don't think I need to because the bass has some important stuff on it, and I'm pretty happy with the way that works out. And I would of course fine tune that if I had more time. Next is this pad. Similarly, like I did with the bass, we might find that I think I did have but we've got this low end around here. We don't need it past 100 because it's a pad. We've already got the low end in this bass and the sub. But above 100 I think is quite useful. Static I don't have really many problems with. And it just works nicely, so we're going to stay with that. Lead. Again, that's playing in all the gaps. I don't think that's going to have an issue. And over here, when it's not playing in the gaps, it's not really playing a lead. So that's cool. Though, what I'm always going to do with all the instruments is I'm going to high pass them because there might be low end garbage, and here I haven't been hearing. So you can see there's like a little bit of volume, and it's very quiet, minus 30 dB, but I don't want it there, so. And there we are, that might have solved a problem. I think I might as well do it with this as well. Yeah, I can't see anything in that, but safe and sorry. These, again, let's have a look. Yeah, there's nothing in the low end, but I'm taking it out. And with these, I don't think there's going to be any mixing problems with them because I'm not really sure I want them in the foreground. They're meant to be there as a kind of a background sort of thing. The kick would be just be doing loads of that. The snare, interestingly, you could, if this was more of a problem during this section and I was playing the snare, I'd want to have the sidechain thing also affecting this. Wait, hang on. Yeah, I'd also want that sidechain affecting this, so I'll probably run them both into a bus and I'd sidechain to that bus. So I was using both the kick and the snare to trigger it. But because this snare's not playing and it's not playing at the same time as the sub, we don't need to do that here. And that same goes for this clap, I suppose, but the clap's again a background thing, so I'm not really worried. But cool. So I think we're pretty much there. But you can obviously you get the idea of what I'm trying to do here. I'm just checking that everything sounds right on their own, and then I'm checking they sound right with everything else, and I'm level matching them. And I think once you've done all that, you can level match for one last time. But I don't think I'm going to bother right now. You can do it. And then finally, before you export it, do all your wherever you want to save it stuff as a PCM because it's good quality. You want to listen to it one more time, and you could use one of these if you want, but I recommend shutting your eyes and not touching it, because when you shut your eyes you're not being distracted by random stuff. And listen all the way through from beginning to end, and if nothing catches your ear as being wrong, then you're ready. But if you keep hearing all that kick's a bit too loud or all that needs a bit more sidechaining, go back, fix it, listen again, and when you've done all that, you're ready. So I think that's my mixing tutorial over. Maybe I'll do a mastering one, but I need to sort out my audio routine properly to be able to because I'm not hearing great quality over here. So yeah, cheers for watching. I hope you found this somehow helpful. I don't know how quickly I went. I haven't been keeping my eye on the clock. But yeah, I hope you found it helpful. Subscribe if you did, and I'll see you next time.